Thank you for joining us for another episode of Baker Hosts Ad Nauseam, a podcast series focusing on new and trending advertising issues with an emphasis on the FTC and the NAD. I'm Connor Corbett, your new host of Ad Nauseam, and you're listening to Baker Hosts. We are once again joined by Amy Mudge and Daniel Kaufman, two partners from Baker Hostetler's advertising, marketing, and digital media team. Together, they have decades of advertising experience and approach advertising issues from multiple perspectives. On today's episode of Ad Nauseam, Amy and Daniel close out 2025 with a fast-paced look at the FTC's most pivotal shifts, from major leadership changes to rulemaking shakeups and the year's most consequential enforcement trends. They will break down what defined the agency's first year under Chairman Ferguson and what these developments signal for advertisers heading into 2026. With that, welcome to Ad Nauseam, and let's turn it over to Amy and Daniel for this week's episode.
Well, we are wrapping up the book on 2025. We are looking forward, perhaps, to what might be in store for 2026. So welcome once again to Ad Nauseam, where today we're going to talk about some of what we saw in 2025 on the FTC front.
We know it's been a year chock full of lots of stuff that perhaps have distracted some of us on focusing on what we here at Ad Nauseam love to focus on, which is all things FTC and NAD. But we thought it would be helpful today to see what year one was at the FTC with Chairman Ferguson at the helm.
And it has been a year, Amy, but we are, of course, right now recording this thick in the sort of holiday New Year season, and that is a wonderful distraction for all of us. So, Amy, we are wrapping up 2025, sealing that thing shut. What were some of your big pop culture highlights for 2025?
Ooh, well, that there's always lots of, all right? All right, let's see. Some of the stuff you and I talk about lots. Concerts, Beyonce, Cowboy Carter. Looking forward to 2026 to see what part 4 is in store. Lady Gaga, the Mayhem Ball. Let's see. Oh, probably started in 2024, but Cola Scola in Oh Mary. TV, Severance, Season 2, The Bear, Season 4, Dubai Chocolate, yummy, yummy, yummy. And the lesson I think I learned is knowing never to canoodle with anyone at a concert ever again, particularly not a Coldplay concert.
Valuable lessons, very valuable lessons that were important in 2025. So I'll start it a little classy with Audra McDonald and Gypsy, a performance for the lifetime. And then reality TV, I think I've mentioned The Traitors a couple of times. It is a new addiction for me. Just got hooked on Pluribus on Apple TV, which I am really, really loving. And finally, for me, the pop culture moment of 2025 was Katy Perry going to space. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that, does it, Amy?
Well, Katy Perry dating Justin Trudeau.
It's official.
And I think she's coming to tour next year, too. So maybe 2026 will be all things Katy Perry, and I would be here for that. But all right, let's turn that clock back. Not pop culture. Look back to January 2025 at the FTC. And that was, of course, quite a busy month. Chair Khan was wrapping up her tenure, and we saw a shocking deluge of cases and projects being announced.
Yeah, I remember there was so much activity going on at the FTC. We're getting sort of spammed by news releases. We had a special Ad Nauseam episode and a blog dedicated to just those weeks. And of course, you can always catch up on old episodes on adventuresinlaw.com. Our buddy Randy Shaheen, of course, joined us for that episode. And we discussed a lot of the drama we were seeing. It was lots of cases, lots of dissenting statements also from the soon-to-be Chairman Ferguson and, of course, Commissioner Holyoke.
And it was unusual. There usually is a push to get cases out the door at the end of an administration, and that we're used to. But this felt different, and the volume was a lot higher. To say it felt rushed would definitely be an understatement.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we had the finalization of some pretty significant amendments to the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. We had a proposed new earnings rule, as well as proposed changes to the business opportunity rule. We had cases such as Graystar, which challenged inadequately disclosed fees. We had a privacy case involving an auto company, a case involving online loot boxes, a right to repair case involving a farming equipment company. And they also announced some preliminary results for that surveillance pricing study that the FTC was conducting.
Yeah, it was a rather hectic start to the year. And then, Chairman Ferguson takes over. And that was in and of itself interesting. We usually would have a time when we'd wait for a new chairman, but he was already in place. So we didn't need renewed Senate confirmation. So he came in right away, took over, and we had a brief pause in casework coming out. That's certainly normal. And, the focus was on bringing in a whole new cast of FTC leadership, including Chris Mufarage as the new BC Bureau Director. And, Chris was also no stranger, though. He had worked for Commissioner Holyoke previously.
But of course, things did not remain quiet for too long at the agency, with the president firing Commissioners Slaughter and Bedoya in March, and with Mark Metter becoming a new Republican commissioner in April. Now, of course, Slaughter's case is at the Supreme Court. Oral argument was held on December 8th. And while we're talking about the cast of characters, also, towards the end of the year, we had the departure of Commissioner Holyoke, who is now the interim U.S. attorney for the District of Utah. And we've seen other changes at the agency, including a significant number of departures of senior level staff, as well as, and this is really important, an overall budget reduction for the agency as well.
Absolutely. And those are way more than administrative changes and personnel changes. I think we're going to see the effect of all of those things, certainly over time and certainly well past 2026. Although I will say I'm going to miss Commissioner Holyoke. I enjoyed her participating with us at our live Ad Nauseam, the ANA conference, and I'm sad we're down to 2 commissioners. But let's talk about those rules and rulemaking was certainly the buzz of 2024 at the FTC. One of the hallmarks of the prior administration was that real resurgence in MAGMOS and other types of rulemaking. And in the first half of 2025, we saw 2 of those rules invalidated by courts of appeals. The CARS rule that was supposed to address deception in connection with auto dealers, one of your favorite topics, Daniel. As you say, you can find an auto dealer case for almost everything. And then also the amended negative option rule, which was, basically ROSCA on steroids, with a far more prescriptive and detailed set of requirements for subscription services, both online and offline. But those are bye-bye in 2025.
Yeah, no, but it was really notable that the new administration did file a brief in support of the negative option rule, but ultimately they were both invalidated on procedural grounds. Now, I believe personally that we haven't seen the last of the negative option rule. It certainly can be resurrected. Not likely in its original form, however. I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, but I could see that reemerging at some point in time. And indeed, the Consumer Federation of America and the American Economic Liberties Project just recently filed a petition with the agency seeking just that. So again, that's not a major step, but worth noting that there's still a little bit of buzz going on about that rule.
Now, this was a look back, not a prediction episode, but I will say, Daniel, you seem to have incredibly clear crystal ball. So I would take this one to the bank, coming from you. But as far as some of the other rulemakings that didn't get to the finish line under Chair Khan, the commercial surveillance so-called rule, and earnings claims, those seem to have quietly disappeared. But, we have a big but here. The recent $24 million settlement of the Graystar case, Chairman Ferguson indicated that he asked staff to commence a MAGMOS rulemaking on the issues of deceptive fees and rental housing. Now, in a footnote, he makes clear that enforcement should be the focus of the agency, but he's okay with rulemaking that aligns with the agency's traditional role as a cop on the beat. So I think it's safe to say it would be premature to say that rulemaking is dead under the current administration.
Yeah, totally agree, Amy. It's not dead, but it'll be different and a little bit more narrowly tailored and all that stuff. Now, FTC rulemaking is generally a very time-consuming thing. And look, we have seen what happens when shortcuts are taken. Rules get invalidated. The common parlance at the FTC when I was there, it was always that FTC rulemaking spans administration. But much more like everything else, that has become far more political and just doesn't seem to be the case anymore. But this topic, him focusing on rental fees, that certainly seems to be an issue that has bipartisan support, generally based upon what we saw in the related cases that were brought in that space.
All right, well, let's turn to the cases because the other stuff's very interesting and can be distracting. But we want to focus a bit on the sorts of cases that we are seeing. And when it comes to casework, we're generally seeing what this administration has promised. Mostly traditional FTC cases that are focused on practices that are squarely harming consumers. Debt relief cases, earning cases, and cases where the FTC is once again going to court and getting TROs and even asset freezes when appropriate.
Yeah, there is no denying we are seeing more of those types of cases, certainly than we saw under Chair Khan's first year at the helm. We've also seen a continued series of ROSCA cases, many of which are ending up in litigation. Now, although one of the mantras of this new administration seems to be that they're not going to stretch the bounds of the law, look, there certainly are some arguments to be made that that might be happening in some of the ROSCA cases or the BOTS Act cases, which are also in litigation. But look, we're going to see how the courts react to some of these allegations and whether the concerns being raised are misplaced or whether they have some validity.
Yeah, and although we haven't seen cases, we know that Made in USA claims are a priority. And I gotta believe we're gonna start seeing enforcement announcements in this area. Well, we also, July was Made in USA month, right?
I believe we had cocktails to celebrate.
I'm sure we did, red, white, and blues. But on the tech side, certainly COPPA enforcement is a priority. This administration is all about the kids, but cases that deal with kids and teens, but might not have a privacy angle, we're also seeing. And, on the AI front, we've seen some enforcement, but again, the targets could best be described as more traditional FTC Act concerns in AI. Claims made about use of AI in terms of money making, or deceptive claims about the accuracy of AI products that are supposed to identify AI content.
Yeah, but Amy, although look, we're seeing a lot of stuff that looks traditional FTC, there are areas, however, where we may be seeing the FTC address issues that go beyond areas where the FTC has traditionally acted. There was a workshop earlier this year that dealt with the issue of gender-affirming care for people under the age of 18. And there is still a big push to deal with issues involving tech companies and content moderation and deplatforming. Now, unclear where this is heading, but certainly as the FTC, and if the FTC delves more into these areas, it certainly has a potential to be explosive and a potential deviation of what we have generally expected from the agency. But I was glad to see a workshop recently announced dealing with the issue of age verification technologies. That's certainly an area we keep seeing more and more state legislation about it, and obviously a very important issue for a lot of our clients.
That is going to be an important one, and that is coming up early in 2026. Well, it's been quite a year.
So, Amy, one thing I've been wondering, I don't think there's been that much talk about sort of the FTC vis-a-vis NAD referrals. What are you thinking about what we can expect to see or not see there?
Oh, and Daniel, that's an excellent segue into our next Ad Nauseam session, where we will do a 2025 debrief of what we've seen at NAD as well. But of course, there is that natural nexus interaction between self-regulation and regulation. The FTC is what gives the NAD its stick if you don't agree to participate in the NAD self-regulatory process, or if you participate but don't agree to put in place the NAD's recommendations, the NAD will do a referral. And in almost all cases, that referral includes sending the file to the FTC. And what we haven't seen in 2025, but actually it dates back earlier than that, is we haven't seen a lot of transparency around what referrals the FTC has accepted and began investigating versus ones that it just decides, look, there's not enough time in the day to focus priority on this. There's a web page that the FTC had that dutifully detailed all of the referrals that came in from NAD and then would indicate what had happened to them. And we haven't seen a posting on that page in some time, but we also know that NAD referrals are up, not dramatically up. Still, most people participate in the process and do what NAD suggests, but there is an uptick. So I think this one I would say is a little strange because Republican administrations usually are much more complimentary of self-regulatory processes. Mostly they will say they see benefit in them and think that they really work. And while this FTC came to the NAD conference, they made some positive statements. I will say I'm a little concerned with the actual activity that the FTC has done to support those NAD referrals.
Yeah, it's interesting, Amy. One thing I think partially what we're seeing also is look, an impact on lower budget, less number of people. There is the need for more triage at the agency to focus on, what are the issues that are core to the Chair Ferguson agenda, and then all the other stuff. So it is at some point there are limited resources, but yeah, no, I think they will pick up the NAD work in the near future. Also, just wanted to mention, I just quickly went on the website, January 28th. That is the date for the age verification technology
Yeah.
work, which I think is going to be a really interesting one.
Could be standing room only. Now we're going to those, right? I think there's an in-person option, not just an online option, which is exciting. Well,
it's going to be cold, though. It's going to be cold on January 28th.
It is true. Oh, another pop culture, the Farmer's Almanac is going away in 2026. This is the last year for it. So we'll just have to say it's just going to be cold all the time, right? All right. Well, look, it has been quite a year. And please do look forward to our similar recap on NAD. But what we really want to do is we want to thank our dear, dear listeners for sticking with us in 2025. I actually have to say, I've heard from a lot of folks that you like what we're doing and you enjoy us on your walk or your commute. And we're thrilled by that. But as always, if there are topics that you want us to tee up in 2026, if there's stuff we've done, but you're ready for a refresh to hear my take and Daniel's take on where things are going, please do let us know. It is an open door here at Ad Nauseam. And we also accept your suggestions for pop culture topics. If you want to hear what Daniel and I like, we are open books.
Yeah, maybe a few less of the hate letters. We don't really need those coming in.
That's I hate Daniel. I've never personally got to.
That laugh is so annoying.
Kidding, my dear friend. I will send you all the love letters that you care to get every day. It is a privilege to have the microphone with you.
And I hope everyone has a wonderful 2026 and keep us with you next year.
And with that, that is a wrap on Ad Nauseam.
Thank you, Amy and Daniel. If you have any questions for Amy or Daniel, their contact information is in the show notes. For more information on the latest developments in ad law, visit our Adventures in Law blog at www.adventures-in-law.com. And check out all Ad Nauseam episodes by subscribing to Baker Hosts wherever you get your podcasts. As always, thanks for listening to Baker Hosts. Comments heard on Baker Hosts are for informational purposes and should not be construed as legal advice regarding any specific facts or circumstances. Listeners should not act upon the information provided on Baker Hosts without first consulting with a lawyer directly. The opinions expressed on Baker Hosts are those of participants appearing on the program and do not necessarily reflect those of the firm. For more information about our practices and experience, please visit bakerlaw.com.